Because I held your daughter while she died. I should not have said it like that. The second the words left my mouth, I wanted them back. Ivy Bennett stood on my porch like I had slapped her. One hand still held the casserole dish she had brought over. The other had gone loose at her side. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. For 2 months I had run from her, every wave from across the fence, every small smile, every soft try at being neighbors. I ran. And now she knew why. Her face turned white under the porch light. "What did you just say?" My throat closed. I could still hear rain on twisted metal, still feel those tiny fingers in my hand, still hear a little girl fighting to stay brave because I told her she was not alone. Ivy took one slow step toward me. "Say it again," she whispered. I did not want to, but I knew one thing with a certainty that made my chest hurt. If I lied now, I would lose whatever was left of my soul. So I looked at the woman next door, the woman I had no right to think about the way I did, and I said the truth that had been poisoning me for 3 years. I was the paramedic in your daughter's car. Ivy did not cry right away. That would have been easier. She just stared at me like her whole body had forgotten how to move, like her mind was still trying to decide whether I was cruel enough to invent something like that. "No," she said at last. "No, you are not." I swallowed hard. I was there the night of the crash. Her eyes searched my face. Maybe she was looking for a lie. Maybe she was looking for mercy. Maybe she was looking for the version of this where I was just the rude neighbor with bad manners and worse social skills. She was not going to find it. "You recognized me," she said. I nodded. "And you still let me keep talking to you. You let me wave at your son. You let me bring you food." Every word landed like a hit. "I tried to stay away from you." She laughed then, one sharp broken sound. "That was you trying." I did not answer, because yes, that had been me trying to stay out of her life, trying not to be the face attached to the worst night she had ever lived through, trying not to admit that every time I saw her standing in her yard with wind in her hair and grief in her eyes, something inside me twisted in ways guilt alone could not explain. Behind me, my house stayed dark and quiet. My son was asleep upstairs. That grounded me. It had to. "My name is Caleb Rowan. I am 30 years old. I work as a paramedic. I'm a widower. I'm a single father. My son Logan is 6 and believes feathered dinosaurs are one of the great injustices of modern education. Most days my world is simple. Pack lunch, get him to school, save who I can, come home, read one more chapter, pretend I am not as tired as I am." Then Ivy Bennett moved in next door, and Simple died. She had arrived in late summer with 2 moving trucks, a tired smile, and a way of carrying silence around her like it belonged to her. The second I saw her face, I knew. Not from somewhere ordinary, not from a grocery store or some school event or a forgotten block party. From a hospital hallway soaked in fluorescent light and grief. She had been younger then, more shattered, on the floor if I was honest, hands clawing at nothing, voice gone raw, surrounded by doctors and strangers and the sound a mother makes when the world ends in one sentence. "Your daughter didn't make it." I had heard that sound in my sleep for 3 years. Then she moved in next door and asked if I wanted banana bread. So I ran. At first I told myself it was kindness. Stay out of her way. Let her have a fresh start. Let her build a new life without seeing the man who had failed her little girl. Then my son ruined that lie by being himself. "Miss Ivy has good flowers," Logan told me one morning over pancakes. "Why do you always go inside when she comes out?" I gave him some weak answer about adult stuff. He looked at me with Emma's eyes, too clear, too smart. "Is she lonely?" he asked. That one hit harder. My wife Emma died when Logan was 4, cancer, quiet at the end, braver than I was all the way through it. She made me promise I would keep our boy's world warm, safe, full of wonder. I tried. God, I tried. But grief changes the shape of a man. It teaches him how to function with a limp no one else can see. I was still standing on that porch, still trapped in the present, when Ivy spoke again. "You knew who I was this whole time." "Yes. And you said nothing." I did not know what right looked like. Her eyes flashed. "So you chose cruel instead." "That was never the point." "Then what was?" I dragged a hand over my face. I was tired, so tired, tired in the bones, tired in the part of me that had carried one promise too long. The point, I said quietly, was that every time I looked at you, I saw that highway again. That landed, I could see it. Her anger faltered just for a second. Then it came back meaner because pain always does. You think you're the only one who sees it. No. Do you think I need your silence to remember my daughter? My chest tightened so hard it hurt. No. Then why do you keep acting like my grief belongs to you more than it belongs to me? I had no defense against that. None. A porch light clicked on across the street. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked once and stopped. The whole neighborhood felt too still, like the world itself was listening. Ivy looked smaller suddenly, not weak, just tired in the way only grief can make a person tired. What was she like? I asked before I could stop myself. She blinked. What? Your daughter. Tell me something about her that wasn't in the accident report. I do not know why I asked that then. Maybe because I was tired of Sophie Bennett only living in my head as blood loss and vital signs and the pressure of her hand in mine. Ivy's face changed. Not softer. Worse. She hated socks, she said after a long pause. Said they felt like tiny prisons for feet. The breath left my lungs. She loved butterflies, purple popsicles, books about animals. She talked too much in class and always felt bad after, even though her teachers secretly adored her. Ivy's voice shook now. She wanted to be a vet. She used to rescue worms from the sidewalk after rain. I closed my eyes. For one terrible second I could see Sophie alive. Not pinned in twisted metal, not pale and slipping. Alive. That hurt more. When I opened my eyes, Ivy was crying, not loudly, just tears falling like they had been waiting at the edge of her for years. I moved here to breathe again, she said, and you looked at me like I was a ghost. You were never a ghost. Then what am I, Caleb? The truth rose up before I could soften it. You're the one person I can't outrun. Silence, her breath caught. Mine did too. There it was, not everything, but enough to make the air feel dangerous. She wiped her cheeks with the heel of her hand. You keep saying you were there. I was. Then answer me. I knew what was coming before she said it. I had lived with it too long not to know. Her voice dropped so low I almost missed it. What were her last words? Everything in me stopped. The porch, the night, the shape of my own breathing. Upstairs, my son slept safely in his bed, and next door a mother stood in front of me waiting for the one promise I had failed to keep. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Ivy stared at me like silence itself was an act of violence. For 3 years I had carried those words like a live wire under my skin. I had heard them in the shower, in the ambulance, in the middle of the night when the house was quiet and Logan was asleep and guilt had room to breathe. I had imagined this moment 100 different ways. None of them ended with me choking on the promise I should have kept the first night. Caleb. Her voice was not loud. It was worse than loud. It was breaking. I forced air into my lungs. She told me to tell you she loved you. Ivy's hand went to her mouth. I kept going before fear could stop me again. She said she wasn't scared. The casserole dish slipped from her fingers and hit the porch with a dull crack. Neither of us looked down. Ivy made one small sound like her whole body had split open in the middle. She asked about you first, I said, because now that I had started I could not stop. Not herself. You. She wanted to know if you were okay. I told her you were. I told her you were waiting for her. I lied because I thought if she believed that, maybe she could rest a little easier. Tears ran down Ivy's face. She talked about butterflies, I said. About some school project. She said you promised to help her make a display board. Then she got quieter. I kept talking. I kept holding her hand. I kept telling her she was not alone. My voice cracked hard. And then she looked at me and said, "Tell my mom I love her. Tell her I'm not scared." Ivy bent forward like the words had hit her in the stomach. I moved on instinct. So did she. For half a second I thought she was reaching for me. She was not. She was trying to stay standing. I caught her arms anyway, and this time she did not pull away. She just cried, not politely, not quietly. Not the kind of crying people survive with dignity. This was the crying of a mother who had just heard her daughter's last gift after waiting 3 years for it. I held on because there was nothing else I could do. "I'm sorry," I whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry it took me this long." She shook against me. I needed that. I shut my eyes. That hurt too, because in all my guilt, all my shame, all my fear of reopening her wound, I had never let myself sit with the ugly truth. I had kept those words because I was a coward, not because I was protecting her. "I should have told you that night," I said. "You should have." "I know." We stood like that on my porch until her crying slowed. When she finally stepped back, her cheeks were wet and her eyes were swollen, but something in her face had changed. Not healed, not even close, but clearer, like pain had finally been given its right name. She looked past me toward the dark stairway inside my house. "Your son's asleep." "Yeah. You really are a single dad." I nodded. "His name's Logan." "How old?" 6, almost 7. She wiped her face. "You never said. You never gave me much chance to be normal around you." That earned the smallest breath of a laugh. It died fast, but it was there. For some reason, that almost broke me more than the tears. "I lost my wife 3 years ago," I told her, "a few months after Sophie died. Ivy went still. Cancer. Her name was Emma. Since then, it's just been me and Logan." I looked down at the broken casserole dish between us. "We've had a quiet life. I got used to surviving it. And then I moved in next door." "Yeah. And you panicked." "Yeah." She crossed her arms like she was trying to hold herself together. "Why does that feel like only half the truth?" Because she was smarter than I wanted her to be. Because grief recognizes grief. Because the other half was the one thing I hated most about myself. I looked out into the yard instead of at her. "When I saw you with that moving truck," I said slowly, "I knew I should come over and help. That's what decent neighbors do. But all I could think was that if you smiled at me before you knew who I was, I'd take it with me like theft." Ivy frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means you felt familiar before I had any right to think that." Her eyes searched my face again, too closely this time. The truth was dangerous now. We both knew it. "You were not just a memory to me," I said. "That was the problem." The porch went silent. A long beat passed between us. Then another. Ivy looked away first. That should have relieved me. It did not. "I just found out the man next door held my daughter while she died," she said quietly. "I don't know what to do with anything you just said." "You don't have to do anything." "That's easy for you to say." "No," I said, "it is." She glanced at me, and for the first time since she had come to my porch, there was no accusation in her eyes, just exhaustion, and something worse, understanding. That made me feel more exposed than anger ever could. "I should go," she said. I knew she was right. I also knew if she walked away now, I had no idea what shape tomorrow would take. Still, I stepped back from the door. "Okay." She looked down at the broken dish. "Forget the casserole. I wasn't going to save it." That tiny almost laugh came again. This time it lasted a second longer. Then she nodded once and crossed the yard to her house without looking back. I stood there until her door closed. Then I crouched and picked up cold casserole with my bare hands because I deserved the sting. The next morning, Logan found me already awake. He came into the kitchen in dinosaur pajamas, carrying his stuffed brachiosaurus by the neck. "You're making pancakes early," he said. "Couldn't sleep." He climbed onto his chair and watched me pour batter into the pan. Logan had Emma's eyes and my silence, which was a terrible combination for a kid. He missed very little. He just chose his moments. "Did you fight with Miss Ivy?" The spatula stopped in my hand. "Why do you ask that?" "Because I heard a lady crying last night, and your face looks bad." "That's a very kind way to say I look ugly." "You don't look ugly, you look guilty." I laughed once, short and dry. Who taught you words like that? You did. Fair enough. He rested his chin on the counter. Did you make her cry? The honest answer was yes. The fuller answer was far uglier. I told her something hard, I said. Something I should have told her a long time ago. Did it help? Kids are brutal because they ask the only question that matters. I think maybe it did both, I said. Helped and hurt. Logan considered that. That happens sometimes. He said it like a tiny old man, like some wise creature wearing socks with cartoon fossils on them. I slid a pancake onto his plate. You're too smart for 6. I know Miss Ivy seems nice. She is. Then maybe don't run away from her anymore. I looked at my son, really looked at him. He had no idea what he was asking, no idea what history sat between Ivy and me, no idea that his father had spent months hiding from a woman because facing her felt like standing in judgment. But he knew enough to see loneliness, enough to name cowardice, enough to ask for better. After I dropped him at school, I sat in my truck outside the station for 5 full minutes before going in. Marcus took one look at me and swore under his breath. Oh no. What? That face means you finally did the stupid brave thing. I tossed my bag into my locker. That's not a real category. It is for you. What happened? I did not mean to tell him. Then again, Marcus had been my partner for 7 years. He had seen me covered in blood, vomit, rainwater, and things much harder to wash off than any of those. So I told him about the porch, about Ivy, about the truth, about Sophie's last words finally reaching her mother after 3 years too late. Marcus listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back against the lockers and let out a long breath. Man. Yeah. You should have told her sooner. I know. But you told her now. That doesn't erase the rest. No, he said, but it matters. I looked down at my hands. I think I made it worse. Marcus shook his head. Nah, worse was before. Worse was her not knowing. Worse was you carrying it alone and acting like guilt was some kind of personality trait. I almost smiled, almost, then I ruined it. There's something else. Marcus groaned. Of course there is. I told her she wasn't just a memory to me. His eyes widened. Caleb. I know. No, not I know, Caleb. I scrubbed both hands over my face. It just came out. Because it's true. I did not answer. That was answer enough. Marcus was quiet for a beat, then his voice changed, softer, more careful. You're allowed to feel something other than guilt, man. That's not the same as deserving it. Maybe not, but feeling it and acting on it are 2 different things. You know that. I did know that. That was the problem. I knew better than most people how vulnerable grief could make a person. How easy it was to mistake rescue for love, proximity for destiny, pain for permission. That was why I had kept my distance. At least that was what I had told myself. The radio cracked to life before Marcus could say anything else. A call came in, then another. The day moved the way days always moved in my job, fast, loud, demanding. There was comfort in that, pain in the chest. A fall at a hardware store, a teenager with a busted wrist and too much pride. People needed things. That part was simple. Life only got complicated in the spaces between calls. By the time my shift ended, the sun was low and my phone had no messages from Ivy. I told myself I expected that. I told myself she needed space. I told myself a lot of smart things all the way home. Then I pulled into my driveway and found her sitting on my porch steps with a small purple butterfly in her hand. She stood when she saw me, and even from a distance I could tell she had been crying again. I need to ask you something, she said, every muscle in my body locked. Okay. She held up the butterfly. It was made of paper, childish, folded, worn at the edges. Sophie made this the week before she died, Ivy said. Her teacher sent home a folder after the funeral. This was inside. I looked at it, then at her. She loved butterflies, I said. She did. Ivy's fingers tightened around the paper. And I need to know if when you held her, if she really looked peaceful. I swallowed hard. She did. Ivy blinked fast. You're not saying that to be kind. No. Then why do I still feel like I failed her? Because grief always asks that question. Because parents bury blame in themselves when there is nowhere else to put the love. Because I asked the same thing every time I closed my eyes. I stepped closer, close enough to tell the truth, far enough not to crowd her. Maybe because loving someone that much leaves nowhere for the helplessness to go, I said. Her face folded then, not fully, just enough. And I knew this was the moment, not relief, not romance. Just the terrible beginning of honesty. Ivy looked at me for a long time after that, like she was trying to decide if I was safe. Not harmless, not easy, safe. There is a difference. The paper butterfly trembled in her fingers. I keep replaying that day, she said. Not the crash, I don't remember that part, I remember breakfast. Sophie wanted chocolate milk and I said no because she had already had too much sugar the night before. She pouted all the way to the car. Her mouth twitched, then broke. That was our last conversation, me saying no to chocolate milk. I felt that one deep, because grief is cruel like that. It does not just replay the big moments. It drags the tiny ones into court too, every sharp word, every missed call. Every ordinary refusal that only became sacred after there were no more chances. She knew you loved her, I said. I know that in my head. Ivy touched her chest. This part is slower. I nodded, yeah. She gave a weak laugh. You say that like you live there too. I do. Her eyes lifted to mine. Emma. I had never said my wife's name out loud to Ivy before. Not really, just enough to explain, not enough to let the truth breathe. Emma, I said. She got diagnosed when Logan was 3. We had 1 year from the first test to the funeral. Everyone kept saying the same thing, be positive, stay strong, fight hard. Like if we loved each other well enough, maybe the cells would get embarrassed and leave. Ivy's face softened. She was brave, I said, braver than me. Near the end, she worried less about dying than about Logan forgetting the sound of her voice. I swallowed once. She made me promise not to let him grow up in a house filled only with sadness. Ivy looked down at the butterfly again. And have you kept that promise? Some days. And other days. Other days, I said. I think I turned survival into a personality. That got a real laugh out of her. Small, wet, tired, but real. It did something to my chest I did not want to name. Ivy sat back down on the porch step like her legs had run out of argument. After a second, I sat beside her, leaving a careful distance between us. The kind of distance you leave when one wrong inch could mean too much. The evening was quiet. A dog barked somewhere down the block. Somebody's wind chime moved once, then settled. I sold our old house because of the walls, Ivy said. The walls. They remembered too much. She rubbed the edge of the paper butterfly. There was a mark by the pantry where Sophie crashed a toy cart into it at full speed. Purple crayon behind her bedroom door. Her height on the laundry room wall. All these tiny things. Innocent things. I thought if I moved, maybe I could choose which memories got me. Did it help? She thought about that. Sometimes, but grief is talented. It learns new routes. That was the truest thing I had heard in a long time. So why this neighborhood? I asked. Because no one knew me here. No casseroles from church ladies who looked at me like I was permanently breakable. No grocery store cashiers asking how I was holding up when what they meant was, are you still sad enough for us to feel noble around you? She exhaled slowly. I wanted one place where I could just be a woman carrying groceries, not a tragedy everyone recognized. My jaw tightened. And instead, she said without looking at me, I moved next door to the man who held my daughter while she died. I had no answer for that, not one that was enough. She turned to me at last. When you saw me that first day, what did you feel? 1,000 things, too many things. Guilt first, always guilt first. Then shock, then dread, then the low and terrible awareness that if she smiled at me, something in me would answer. I chose honesty. Like I had been found by the one person I least deserved to stand in front of. Ivy absorbed that in silence. Then she asked the question I should have expected and still was not ready for. Did you ever come over here at night? I frowned. What? My mailbox got fixed in September. One of the porch lights too. I didn't do it. She turned fully toward me now. Was that you? I looked out into the yard. That was answer enough. Caleb. The mailbox was hanging by one screw, I muttered, and the light was flickering. So you snuck over in the dark and fixed things, but you could not say hello in daylight. When you put it like that, I sound insane. You are a little insane. We both smiled then. It was brief and wrong and human, and that was worse somehow. Because little moments like that are dangerous. They trick you into forgetting the ground is still cracked underneath you. The screen door opened behind us before either of us could say more. Dad. Logan, I stood so fast my knee popped. He was in the doorway rubbing one eye, hair everywhere, dinosaur pajama shirt twisted sideways. He looked from me to Ivy and immediately understood something was different. Kids always do. Miss Ivy, he said, sleep rough in his voice. Are you okay? That undid her, not with sobbing this time, just with tenderness so sudden she had to look away. I'm okay, she said softly. Couldn't sleep. Logan nodded like that made perfect sense. Then his eyes dropped to the paper butterfly in her hand. Oh, is that for real from a kid? I almost laughed. Ivy blinked, surprised. Yeah, it was my daughter's. He came out onto the porch, dragging his stuffed Brachiosaurus by the tail. Logan did not know yet, not all of it. He just knew adults sometimes wore hurt like a second shirt. She made it good, he said, studying it seriously. The wings are crooked, but in a cool way. Ivy let out the breathiest little laugh. She would have liked that review. Logan looked at me. Can I sit? I moved over and he folded himself down between us like it was the most natural thing in the world. One warm, small shoulder against my arm, the other almost brushing Ivy's sleeve. You should sleep more, he told her. It helps your face. I covered my mouth. Ivy pressed her lips together hard, trying not to laugh. Thank you for the medical advice. You're welcome. Dad says weird stuff when he's tired too. Logan. What? It's true. The thing about children is that they can walk straight into the middle of grief and somehow not make it uglier. They ask what is real. They offer what they have. They do not perform. Ivy looked down at the butterfly again. Do you ever miss someone so much it feels loud? Logan nodded at once. My mom. My head turned toward him. He did not say it often, not because he had forgotten, just because his grief still came in weather patterns he could not name. I miss her when people make lasagna wrong, he said, and when other kids make Mother's Day cards at school, and one time because I found one of her socks in the dryer and it made me feel weird. I swallowed hard. Ivy's eyes filled. That makes sense. He leaned closer to look at the butterfly. Was your daughter nice? There it was, the line, the one I could have blocked, the one I maybe should have blocked, but Ivy answered before I could step in. She was funny, she said, and loud, and she talked to animals like they worked for her. Logan smiled. That sounds good. It was good. He thought about it, then took the paper butterfly very gently. Can I hold it? Ivy hesitated only a second before giving it to him. He turned it over in both hands like it was a fossil. Did she like dinosaurs? Ivy looked at me first, maybe for help, maybe because she did not trust herself with the sweetness of the question. Then she smiled at Logan. She liked butterflies more. But I think she would have liked your dinosaur facts. Most people do, he said gravely. That did it. Ivy laughed for real, soft, shaky, alive. I had heard her laugh once before from across the yard when a grocery bag split and oranges rolled into the street, and she had laughed at the absurdity of chasing fruit in sandals. That sound had stayed with me all week. I hated that, loved it too, both at once. Now the sound was right beside me, and Logan, without knowing what gift he had just handed us, smiled like he had fixed something. Maybe he had. I tucked him back into bed 20 minutes later after he hugged Ivy goodnight and informed her that butterflies were basically just sky flowers with commitment issues. When I came back downstairs, she was still on the porch. "You didn't have to let him stay out here," she said. "He would have held a protest if I tried to stop him." She smiled, then it faded. "I don't know what I'm doing, Caleb." "That makes two of us." "I mean really doing." Her fingers traced the step beside her. "I came over tonight because after last night I couldn't just stay in my house pretending nothing cracked open, but being here with you and your son and this." She lifted the butterfly a little. "This feels like standing in the middle of a fire and not knowing whether I'm burning or thawing." I sat back down. That line hit me so hard I had to look away. "I keep thinking," she said, "if Sophie had lived I would never know you, and that thought makes me feel sick. Because what does it say about me, that something good could grow near the worst thing that ever happened to me?" I turned to her then. "It says life is rude," I said. "It says grief doesn't ask permission before it changes the map. It says good things can grow in broken ground and still be good." Her eyes searched mine. "Do you believe that?" "I'm trying to." Ivy drew in a shaky breath. "I'm scared that if I let you matter, I'm betraying her." I answered without thinking, "You're not." She blinked. "You are not betraying your daughter by staying alive past her," I said. "And you are not betraying her by laughing, or sitting on a porch, or talking to my weird kid about butterflies." My voice dropped. "Love doesn't shrink because another love shows up. It makes room." We were both quiet after that. The kind of quiet that does not end something, the kind that starts it. Then Ivy did the one thing I had not prepared for. She reached over and took my hand. No romance in it, not yet, just skin, warm, honest, trembling a little. I looked down at our hands like they belonged to two strangers and one truth. "I don't know what this is," she whispered. Neither did I, but I knew what it was not. It was not pity. It was not rescue. It was not some rushed answer to grief. It was the first real thing I had touched in a long time, so I closed my fingers around hers and told the truth. "I don't either." She nodded once. Then she said, "The parole hearing notice came last week." My chest tightened. "The driver?" "Yes, Derek Voss. He's up in 2 months." Her voice hardened around his name. "His lawyer thinks remorse should count for something." I went still. That was the first moment since she moved in that my guilt stepped back and made room for anger. "Are you going?" "I don't know." Her jaw flexed. "Part of me wants to stand in front of him and make sure he hears Sophie's name from my mouth. Part of me wants to never see his face again." "That makes sense." "Does it?" She looked at me. "Because all day I keep thinking if he gets out, if they say 8 years is enough, I might break in a way I don't know how to come back from." Without meaning to, I tightened my grip on her hand. Her eyes dropped to it, then back to me. The night changed right there, not because we kissed. We didn't. Not because we said anything dramatic. We didn't. It changed because for the first time I knew her future pain was not something I could watch from a distance. I was already in it. "Ivy," I said carefully, "if you go to that hearing, you won't go alone." She did not breathe for a second. Then her thumb moved once across my knuckles, and that small touch felt more dangerous than any kiss could have. Ivy looked at our hands for a long time. Then she let go, not like she was rejecting me, more like she understood exactly how much that one touch had meant, and she needed the air back in the room before either of us said something we could not carry wisely. "You shouldn't promise things that big when people are sad," she said softly. "I know." "You still mean it?" "Yes." That answer came too fast to be rehearsed. It was just true. If she walked into that hearing, I would be there. If she fell apart in the parking lot after, I would still be there. If she changed her mind halfway through and needed to leave, I would drive. Not because I was trying to save her. Not because guilt was making choices for me. Because I loved her. I knew it then. Knew it with the kind of clarity that scares a man more than confusion ever could. Ivy stood and smoothed her hands over her jeans. I should go home. I stood too, okay. Neither of us moved. The porch light hummed quietly above us. Somewhere inside the house, the refrigerator kicked on. Across the yard, her dark windows waited for her. She looked at me, and there it was again. That pull, not grief this time, not only grief, something warmer, riskier, more alive. "If I go to the hearing," she said, "and if I say everything I need to say, then after that I don't want to hide anymore." My pulse kicked hard. Hide from what? "From this," she said, gesturing between us. "From how different it feels when I'm here. From how your son already makes space for me like I belong. From how I wait for your truck in the driveway and pretend I'm not." I could not breathe right for a second. "Ivy." "No," she said, shaking her head. "Let me finish while I'm brave." So I did. She drew in one slow breath. "I don't know if what I feel is too early or too messy or too tangled up in everything we've survived, but I know this. When you stopped running, something in me stopped running too. God, there are moments when a man can feel his life dividing. Before this, after this was one of them." I stepped closer, slowly, giving her every chance to pull back. She didn't. "I'm done hiding too," I said, "but I need to do this right." Her eyes searched mine. "What does right look like?" "Truth, patience, no pretending this is simple." I swallowed once. "And no using pain as an excuse to rush something good." She stared at me, then nodded. "That sounds fair." "Also," I said, "because if I did not say it now, I would regret it. I need to tell Logan before anything changes in a bigger way. He comes first." That earned me the smallest, saddest, sweetest smile. "I know," she said. "That's one of the reasons this feels safe." Safe, that word landed deeper than love would have right then, because safe meant she had noticed. Safe meant restraint mattered. Safe meant all the ways I had been trying not to take too much from a wounded situation had not been invisible after all. I walked her down the porch steps. At the edge of the yard, she stopped. "Caleb." "Yeah. Thank you for finally telling me." I looked at her, really looked, at the tiredness under her eyes, at the ache she carried so openly now, at the courage it had taken to come to my porch to ask the question, to hear the answer, to still be standing. "No more running," I said. She nodded once. "No more running." Then she went home. The next 6 weeks did not turn gentle just because we had chosen honesty. That is not how life works. Grief did not clap for us and step aside. Some mornings Ivy waved from her porch and came over for coffee before work. Some mornings she stayed inside, and I could see from the shape of her shadow behind the curtain that she was not okay. On those days, I left a cup of coffee on her step and went back inside without knocking. Sometimes she texted thank you. Sometimes she texted nothing. Both were answers. Logan, of course, adapted before either of us did. He started asking whether Miss Ivy liked blueberry pancakes better than chocolate chip. He began collecting butterfly facts to trade her for the dinosaur facts she tolerated so kindly. Once, while I was packing his lunch, he said, "If she's sad, we should keep being nice. Sad people need more niceness, not less." That one stayed with me. Marcus noticed the shift too. "You look terrified," he said one afternoon while we restocked the rig. "I am." "That bad? That real?" He grinned. "About time." I did not tell him everything, but I told him enough. About the hearing coming up. About Ivy trying to write her victim statement and deleting every version because none of them were enough. About the way she sat at my kitchen table one night staring at a blank page while Logan built a cardboard dinosaur museum on the floor, and how all I wanted to do was take the burden from her even though I knew I couldn't. Marcus listened. Then he said the one thing I needed to hear. "You don't have to rescue her, you just have to stay." Stay, such a small word, such a brutal one. The hearing came on a gray Thursday morning in December. I drove. Ivy sat in the passenger seat in a black coat with both hands around a folded piece of paper she had rewritten 12 times. She barely spoke on the way there. I did not fill the silence. Some roads are meant to be traveled without noise. When we got to the courthouse parking lot, she didn't move to get out. "I can still leave," she said. "Yes." "Would you hate me if I did?" Never. That broke something open in her face, not weakness, relief. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can offer a hurting person is an unlocked door. She looked down at the statement in her lap, then out through the windshield, then back at me. I want him to hear her name. Then let's go in. She did, and I went with her. I will not tell the whole hearing. Some pain belongs to the people inside it. But I will tell you this. Derek Voss looked smaller than the monster I had built in my mind. That made me angrier, not less. There is something offensive about ordinary faces attached to catastrophic choices. Ivy stood when it was her turn. She shook. She cried once and kept going. And she said Sophie's name like a bell in that room, not as evidence, not as tragedy, as a life, as a girl who hated socks and loved butterflies and should have grown older. When it was over, Derek Voss's parole was denied. Ivy did not smile. Neither did I. Justice does not resurrect. It only names the wound correctly. Outside the courthouse, she stood on the steps in the cold, breathing hard like she had outrun something huge and invisible. Then she turned to me. "It's done." I nodded, "Yeah." She started crying then, not because she regretted going, because she had made it through. I wrapped my arms around her and she buried her face against my coat and shook with the force of finally being allowed to stop bracing. When she pulled back, her eyes were red but steady. "I'm done hiding," she said. "So am I." She touched my face with both hands, warm, careful, certain. And when she kissed me, it was not wild, it was not rushed. It was not grief trying to become romance in a single desperate move. It was slower than that, cleaner, a choice. When we got home, Logan opened the front door before we even reached it. He looked at Ivy's face, then mine. Then he smiled in the knowing way children do when adults finally catch up to obvious truths. "Did the bad man stay in jail?" "Yes," Ivy said, kneeling to his height. "Good. He studied her for one beat longer. Are you staying for dinner too?" Ivy looked at me, I looked at Logan, and for the first time nothing in me hesitated. "Yes," I said, "she is." He nodded like that had always been the plan. That night, after spaghetti and dinosaur talk and one heated debate about whether butterflies would survive in the age of T-Rex, I stood in the kitchen watching Ivy laugh at something Logan said. My house looked the same. Same table, same fridge magnets, same half-broken cabinet I kept meaning to fix. But it did not feel the same. It felt larger somehow, not because grief was gone. Emma was still gone. Sophie was still gone. There would still be hard days. Their names would still ache in us. We would still get ambushed by songs and dates and grocery store aisles and the strange little cruelties of memory. But the house no longer felt built only for survival. It felt built for life. Later, when Logan was asleep and Ivy stood with me on the back porch under the winter stars, she slipped her hand into mine. No fear in it now. No apology either, just truth. "We're going to have hard days," she whispered. "I know. You'll have Emma days, I'll have Sophie days. I know. And some days will both be impossible." That made me smile, also true. She leaned her head against my shoulder. "Promise me something." "Anything." "When one of us goes quiet, the other one stays." I looked out at the dark yard, at the fence that had once felt like a border between pain and possibility. Then I squeezed her hand and gave her the only vow I trusted. "I stayed," I said, "and that changed everything."